What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring you incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is a leading international mindfulness expert, author, and presenter. He is the founder of The Conscious Professional and a pioneer of the mindfulness and conscious leadership movement. Please welcome Neil Seligman. Neil, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here talking to you.
I know I've been talking your ear off for a few minutes before we started recording, but I really feel that there is a underlying energy in the universe right now where mindfulness is becoming more adopted and more people are more exercising it more today. And thankful to people like you. You agree?
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree. It's been a really interesting wave to kind of surf because I founded my business, which is a corporate mindfulness consultancy, before anyone had really heard of mindfulness. So it literally came to me in a meditation. This is what I should do with my life. Those first few years, it's like 2012, 2013. I'm going out to my network and nobody knows what mindfulness is, but they're really sure they don't want it.
Yeah.
That was the feedback I got. And it took a couple of years before I got my first corporate client. I started kind of packaging things as resilience, but sliding some mindfulness in there. And then gradually over time, mindfulness has become, mainstream. And that's, 2012 to 2023. It's only, just over a decade. Look at the change.
So I have a lot of questions. I mean, I'm big into, I do a morning meditation, usually every morning if, I wake up on time. I'm not a morning person, but I'm very much, even if I'm in the car, I'll do a meditation because you can do a meditation. You don't have to always just be laying down and sitting still, just as long as you're mindful and you're allowing yourself to be open to, that energy in the universe, right? So I guess when you started going out to different businesses, when you got your first big client, what was that like for you? And how did the company react to you bringing this into their organization?
So first of all, it was a big relief because
I bet.
I've been on this committed journey thinking, okay, I trust my intuition, but it was wearing a bit thin by the time, I'd had a lot of rejection. So it was really nice to basically I was starting a trainee program. And it was the first time they'd introduced anything like resilience. We packaged it in with digital well-being, mindfulness, some stuff on personal well-being, just kind of basic stuff.
Yeah.
I still get people coming back to me now on LinkedIn or email saying, I still have that manual that you gave me in that session. And so it's, it's really nice to look back on that as the start. And then, the way it's all developed over the years, our trainings now have become much more focused on, well, how do we apply mindfulness to professional skills? So it's not just about what is mindfulness anymore.
Right.
Most people kind of have a bit of a baseline there. But it's about, okay, well, how do we apply this to our communication skills, to our personal challenges like imposter syndrome? How do we feed this into our desire to have more emotional intelligence? This kind of the fine-tuning pieces. And then the leadership side of it as well. And that actually has been really my interest. I can do the what is mindfulness trainings, that's fine. But I'm really more interested in, okay, now if we're being more mindful and we're folding this into how we operate in the world, how can we also think about what this kind of makes possible for humanity if we bring awareness into everything? And that's really what I stand for. And, that's the conversations that I get excited about.
Yeah, no, I love it. If someone doesn't understand what mindfulness is, how do you explain that to them?
Yeah, so mindfulness is kind of a rebrand of meditation in a way. Meditation was kind of thought of as a little bit too spiritual to talk about in businesses, in health services, in schools. And mindfulness, whilst it does have its roots in Buddhism as a word and as a practice, there was a teacher who's still kind of the sort of grandfather of modern mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn, who actually had a conversation with the Dalai Lama and asked, is it okay if we take mindfulness out of Buddhism and introduce it to the West as this kind of mind training so that people can kind of go on the journey of meditation, but they don't need to necessarily go on the Buddhist path. And right. They're not necessarily going to be religious. They may have all sorts of differences and cultural aspects they bring with them. Can we welcome them into meditation this way and talk about it as mindfulness? And Dalai Lama was like, yeah, definitely. You should definitely do that. It's going to be good for everyone. So that's kind of where it came from. And so there's kind of formal aspects to mindfulness practice. So we might do like a sitting meditation type of practice and pay attention to our breath. A lot of mindfulness is around embodiment. So we might do a body scan and actually take our awareness. Our awareness usually centered in the head, right? When we're working, we're busy, we're thinking up here. We're trying to drop awareness through the body so we can connect with the feet, with the legs, the hands, the body. Really get a sense of, okay, I'm actually all of this organism. I'm not just this thing. And so a formal practice would be, you're sitting down, you're lying down, and you're paying attention to some aspect of experience, which is rooted in the present moment. And then the more informal practices might be, okay, I'm washing the dishes and I'm being present. So I'm going to actually pay attention to my senses as I'm doing it. And the whole point of these practices, and it's often not well kind of described or understood why we do this, but when we take the mind and the body and bring them together into the present moment, it's soothing for the whole organism, for the whole system.
Yeah.
Usually the body's doing one thing, right? So we can be washing the dishes, but actually I'm worrying about my meeting tomorrow, or I'm fretting about what I said yesterday to my partner or whatever. And actually my body's doing one thing, but my mind is either in past or future. This is a stressful experience for the human organism. And so it's that skill of, okay, let's practice being present in our formal practice. Let's practice being present to our senses, to what's actually happening right now, and attend to it and witness it as we're moving throughout our day. And those two things together can help us basically de-stress a little bit. We're talking about percentage gains rather than a kind of switch of now I'm in bliss just because I'm practicing mindfulness. But it's percentage gains which are useful. So it's kind of nudging us towards calm and equanimity. And there's lots more to it. Loads of different skills we learn along the way about how to relate to our thoughts, emotions, and sensations with greater skill and control over time. We sort of kind of mapping our inner consciousness. And I find that for most people to be really valuable.
Yeah, there is a discipline that is required when you start doing, practicing mindfulness, let alone meditation. I myself love it when I'm able to be, and I know what you're talking about, be fully present. If I'm cleaning the house and just finding the joy and the peace and doing the cleaning of the house and just having no sound, no distractions, and able just to be right in there in that moment. And it is a beautiful feeling. Like it's almost like, if you can achieve that, not let the monkey mind go crazy, there is a feeling of euphoria and just total, utter like joy and peace that comes within being so present in that moment. And, we are human, we always got a million things going on. So it's not always possible to get to that place. But when you can get to that place, it is so beautiful that it really, like you said, it brings you such peace and calm that it is. I definitely recommend to people to try
it. For sure. And most people will have, a few activities in their life they could point to and be like, okay, yeah, there's this thing that I do. Maybe it's running, maybe it's skiing, maybe it's yoga, whatever your thing is, where actually you just let go of the kind of day-to-day grumbles of life. And you're so in the experience that it's that experience of timeless flow.
Yeah.
And I think the teaching of mindfulness is that the state of that sort of eternal state of presence and flow is available in all times and in all things, in all activities. And it's really hard. That's why it's a practice. It's really hard to cultivate that. It's really hard to remember to do it. There's 12,000 different things that can distract us out of that into our patterns and habits and so on. And so, yeah, that's why I find it kind of endlessly fascinating, because it's super simple and really complex all at the same time.
For sure. So when you get into, I mean, now that the audience is knowing what mindfulness is and what that actually means, if they can imagine that in their head, when you go into an organization, a corporation, and you're starting to apply this for them into their everyday work life, what does that look like for them? And how do you explain that, how they can implement this into what they do? Because it's completely different when you're cleaning washing the dishes or cleaning the house personally versus professionally. Like you can be mindful, but you also have to have this professional mind when you're doing that. Or do you tell them it's one of the same?
I try not to tell people things generally. My audiences are, they're super smart. They're already pretty good at what they're doing.
Sure.
And so, I kind of invite people to explore and discover in terms of their experiences. And there's a couple of different ways kind of we would bring mindfulness in. Sometimes, teaching the other day, a 90-minute session on imposter syndrome. So in the exploration of that, we're going to talk about some of the theory around imposter syndrome and what it is and what it isn't. But I also will do a mindfulness practice at the beginning and the end. So at the beginning, I'll do a practice to help people kind of arrive and drop in, but also to reflect on an experience of imposter syndrome so that they can kind of bring it into their present moment experience of what happens. Like, where do they feel it in their body? What are their symptoms? What are the repetitive thoughts that come up? What are the behaviors that they get drawn into? So they have some data, and that sort of real present moment data. I find it really useful to reflect on things in the scope of kind of a meditation or a visualization.
Sure.
And then at the end of the session, we can do a more of a mindfulness visualization of like, well, let's look into the future a little bit and feel what it would feel like to have a more evolved relationship with our own self-appreciation, with our own self-compassion, perhaps overcoming a little bit of our own negativity bias. Like, how would we move through space in that future? How would you feel in your body? Like, what will be different about your expression? And those tools, I think, sort of take these types of shorter trainings to a different level in terms of impact, because you're bringing things in a really kind of embodied way, and you're giving space for integration and for learning to kind of find its way into the body. And so that's kind of one way we use mindfulness to look at skills that are or challenges. And then, if we're teaching mindfulness, there'll sometimes be companies that are offering like a retreat experience, so you can kind of lead it over a number of days and build skills. But often that's quite rare. So we have an online course as well, which is a 10-day program called Zen in 10, which is just 15 minutes a day. And it builds the basics of mindfulness meditation to allow people to basically, by the end of it, sit in meditation for 10 minutes without a teacher, without music, without guidance, and know what they're doing. That's the only aim of it. 10 minutes, because if you can meditate for 10 minutes, you can kind of meditate for as long as you want. It's the first 10 minutes of like, okay, I'm going to sit in my own silence and not freak the F out. And for a lot of people, that's an important mountain. And this course is about, okay, let's break that down, and let's show people that actually it's not that complicated. You can be kind of led into that, and find a way to kind of make friends with our own inner space and our silence. So
a lot of people are kind of scary of sitting in their own silence. It's kind of scary to them to sit in their own silence. I know for me it was before, in my previous life. Now where I'm at today, I I can sit in the car and just have nothing but silence. But my fiance, well, he's got to turn the volume up. I'm like, let's just sit in silence. Let's just take it all in. He thinks I'm a little woo woo, but that's okay. After you do these trainings, this leadership, the conscious leadership movement, for these organizations, what is the outcome, the typical outcome when you go into an organization and do what you do?
So I think it's really an increase overall in self-awareness within the organization, which measurably is really increasing emotional intelligence. Because ultimately, the types of trainings that I do, and others in this field, of course, it's kind of about culture change. And in companies, there's this journey going on, which is kind of stepping away from the sort of macho nature of work, and allowing it to become a bit more human and a bit more humane. And so that kind of conscious leadership moment is really the kind of shift from the old command and control leadership models, where we were kind of scared of the people who are more senior than us, and it's kind of a fear system, and maneuvering that gradually to a more collaborative, human-centered, conscious leadership space. And that's about taking people on the journey, and it's about listening and co-creating and being kind of coach and buddy to the people you're leading, and trusting their vision and their ideas, and looking at how to harmonize the team. And this has been obviously going on for a long time, this shift. But conscious leadership is kind of another lens into it, which is very much seated in the mindfulness space, because the conscious piece is all about awareness, and mindfulness is a tool of awareness. It's kind of the way that we can map our inner awareness. And so, it's those types of outcomes. We might see the organization, it's hard to measure these things, but becoming kind of more compassionate and kinder. And that plays out in terms of retention, less sick days, just a better kind of morale. It's that kind of...
It helps with mental health overall. Why do you think it's important for organizations to start investing into someone like you to come in and to help implement this into their culture?
Because conscious businesses are outperforming non-conscious businesses. So, we might think of our organization as being limited by the consciousness of the leader. Any organization can't really evolve beyond the consciousness of the leader or the leadership. And so if you're not investing in raising the consciousness of your leadership, you're going to be maybe at the top of where you can be right now. And that's not what you want to be in 10 years' time. Because there are businesses who are folding all of this in and seeing how, the way in which they are creating these different types of cultures, particularly as the workplace is completely revolutionizing itself in this decade in terms of, what's happened through COVID, and the flexibility of work is just, it's really disrupting the whole workplace and what people, expect and experience from their work. And so to have leaders who are not threatened by that, but able to roll with it, and to co-create in and around all of that change, that's a big part of what this brings. If we're in a fear mindset, we become defensive, aggressive. You see all sorts of businesses kind of flailing around that sort of thing. So I think it's really, the long-term success of the organization has to be about evolving its own consciousness.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I'm not in corporate anymore, but if I was still in corporate, I would, this is something that I would appreciate if leadership did start, investing into increasing the consciousness of the company. A couple more questions before we start wrapping things up. time is flying by. So you've got a couple books. Can you tell us about your books?
For sure. I have them here. So this is 100 Mindfulness Meditations. I always describe this one as like a recipe book of meditations. And I wrote it because I was bored there was like 10 or 15 meditations that I was hearing all the time. And I was like, it's got to be more than this. Yeah. And I just downloaded these meditations. I would literally meditate every day and then write down what I received. And I received these meditations. I wrote the book in like less than 6 months. Wow. And it was just boom, out there. So that's a really fun one. And then this one is called Conscious Leadership, Reveal Your Potential, Inspire Excellence. And yeah, I was asked to kind of download the goodies from my corporate trainings into a really kind of bite-sized, easy to read, well-organized book. And that's what popped out. So it's a kind of book that, you read on the train or on a plane, or, you can just kind of dive in and get really good tidbits about all sorts of different things around leadership and personal well-being and taking a heart-centered approach, and all sorts of generosity, gratitude, kindness, compassion in leadership. There's lots of good stuff in there. So those are the 2 books.
I love it. And where can people find those books?
So you can find the books on Amazon. You can connect through neilseligman.com to kind of all of my publications and services and things. And then on the corporate side, theconsciousprofessional.com is the business kind of side of it. So B2B stuff.
Excellent. You also have an online course. Can you share with us what that is really quick?
Yeah, so that's the Zen in 10 one that I already mentioned. Yeah,
okay.
So that's cool. The 10-day mindfulness course that kind of accelerates mindfulness, leaving you able to meditate for 10 minutes on your own.
Nice. Love it. Okay. I will put all his links in the show notes. So if you connected with what Neil has shared with us today, do not hesitate to go click those links, go check him out, purchase one of his books. If you are looking for some guiding and meditation, I know I'm interested in checking out that book because, I think that's very important for us. This is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
Can I leave you with a mini practice?
Yeah,
so
please.
Many months. So it's called FHB. So if I just guide it, you can do it together.
Yes.
So F stands for feet on the floor. So we want both feet flat on the floor, not crossed. Feet on the floor. So we get that sense of, okay, I am a physical body being connecting through my socks into the carpet, but into the earth. I'm grounding here. So feet on the floor. H stands for hand on heart. So put one hand or both hands on the heart and just feel that sense of comfort and connection, and that reminder of, I'm a heart-centered being. There it is. Right in the center of me. It's right there. Feet on the floor, hands on heart. B is body on breathing. So this is just a super quick settler. It allows us to remember who we are, what we are. Feet on the floor, hands on heart, body on breathing. FHB. Really simple 30-second to 60-second practice. You can do it anytime you're panicked or feeling a bit anxious. And it just allows us to come back to the body, the breath, to settle before we get into what we need to do. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Well, Neil, it was such a pleasure hearing your story and what you're bringing to organizations and to people everywhere. I think that it is a beautiful thing. And the more mindful that we can all become, the better world it will become.
For sure. Here.
Well, we appreciate you for being here today. So, I'm going to check out one of your books because I like the 100 mindfulness meditations. I'm going to grab one of those. So
nice. Thanks for having me, Deanna.
You are welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.